Good evening. I call to order the Lake Havasu City Council regular meeting on Tuesday, January 28, 2020 at 6 p.m. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Andrew Cave from Lamb of God Lutheran Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance from the Community Emergency Response Team, Bob McMillan.
The psalmist writes, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All those who practice it have a good understanding. His praise endures forever." Let us pray. O Lord God, you alone are the source of all wisdom and understanding. You have established the governing authorities that they may lead us according to your will. Grant to these your servants wise and discerning hearts and minds, that they may lead and govern according to your will, that they may have a good understanding, and that all things may be done to your honor and praise. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Bob, if you'd like to make your way up to the podium.
Would you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless our troops and first responders.
And Bob, if you could share a little bit about your organization, if you could turn on the microphone, there should be a button right in the center of that microphone box. Yes, you have it.
There we go. Thank you very much for permitting us to be here tonight. I spoke to the mayor earlier and he said I could have 3 minutes, but I said I was going to give each team member 3 minutes. So it's going to be a long meeting. I think most of you know who we are. We're the Green Team, or the Lake Havasu City Fire Department Community Emergency Response Team. We've been in service for 15 years this January. Our membership stands at 35 members, all of whom love serving the community we live in. In early December, we responded to 6 major structure fires, staffing the rehab division for the fire department. Sadly, 6 Havasu families lost their homes. At each fire, we worked over 4 hours and doing our assigned job of rehab, and 2 of which were during the night when it was very cold, and cold enough even that the breathing apparatus tanks frosted up on us on that night. So, on December 13th, several of our members worked along with most of you people staffing the community Christmas dinner. On December 21st, we assisted the Havasu Community Food Bank in passing out toys for the families that are serviced by the food bank. In early January, the Balloon Festival rolled into town. 19 members worked 487 hours staffing the first aid station and providing emergency services, which included digging out 2 cars out of the sand that were stuck in the evening. We froze to death, and also we lost 2 easy ups during the wonderful windy day at the Balloon Fest. The past weekend, we worked at the Little Delbert Rodeo Days, staffing a first aid station and assisting in the grandstand's safety. We're already pushing 800 hours for this year, and January is about to end. Looking ahead, we have 5 major events that are requesting our services in first aid between now and the end of March. Then comes the hot summer, and we are focused very much so on rehabbing the firefighters at fires because it's very important for their health and safety. We're living up to our motto, working together to help our neighbors. If you have any questions that I could answer, why, feel free to, or if not, thank you very much for us being here.
Yeah, thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions?
I don't have a question,
Councilmember
Mr. Mayor,
McCoy?
but I do want to say that you guys are at every event, and we so appreciate your hard work and always being there. And so thank you so much for everything you put into our community.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work. Yes. The next item on the agenda is the roll call. Ms. Williams?
Council members Cal Sheehy,
Here.
David Lane,
Here.
Jenny Koch.
Here.
Gordon Grote.
Here.
Michelle Lynn.
Here.
Donna McCoy.
Here.
Jim Dolan.
Hi, Kelly. I am present.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the call to the public. This is the opportunity where citizens have the opportunity to address the city council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the city. This is if you are here to talk about an item that is on a public hearing, we encourage you to wait to that area so we can have a two-way conversation back and forth. But during the call to the public, we only have the opportunity to listen because it's not on the agenda. You would have 3 minutes. There is a light indicator box. Green means you have your full 3 minutes. Yellow means 1 minute's remaining, and red means that the 3 minutes is up. You don't have to sign up to speak at the call to public, but we do have one person that has, Chris Dial. If you would like to make your way to the podium.
Hello again. My name is Chris. I'll go by Chris. I did it again. I gave my full name. I was trying to talk about AA. It's like a faux pas. 2 meetings in a row. I wanted to be anonymous, but what I'm doing is I'm following up on the agenda item of last meeting. I understand it's been passed. It was the consent agenda 6.2, but it's regarding public safety and Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I did was I got the direct quotes of Emmett Fox. In Alcoholics Anonymous, it explains that in the beginning, before their big book was published, they handed out to newcomers Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount, which is scientific Christianity. When I came into AA in 1985, the old-timers told me that that's real AA. Emmett Fox, Scientific Christianity is real AA. So they encouraged me to buy the books, which I did. It cost like $25. I got 5 of his books. And I read it, and then I got to chapter 2, the end of it. And I brought this up at the last meeting, but I'll reiterate. What Fox taught was that all persecution and hindrance are absolutely from within. There is no virtue in martyrdom. We have to see that the Christian martyrs, that their understanding was incomplete, or they would not have been martyred. Had the martyrs loved their enemies sufficiently, loved them, that is to say, in the scientific sense of knowing the truth about them, etc., etc. So what it turns out to be is that it's a conglomeration of Christianity and Darwinism. And so that's why you have someone saying, blame shifting, blaming the martyrs for their own martyrdom. It's coming from Darwinism. And I realize that in the AA's big book, they quote from the grandfather of Darwinism, Herbert Spencer. He's prominently quoted in the big book. So it's a very interesting mix of religion and Darwinism. And then what happens is you get social Darwinists in AA that will attack people that try to accept and believe in religious concepts. So you have a lot of harassment that occurs in AA because of it, and I've experienced it. And so that's why I think it's important that the Serenity Prayer author Reinhold Niebuhr in AA opens up with his prayer, the Serenity Prayer. He said in 1958 in the interview with Mike Wallace, he pointed out that the necessity of there being a separation of, he emphasized the necessity of separation of church and state. And Wallace says, if we hear about the necessity for separation between church and state, if religion is good, why should our society be based upon a separation between the church and the state? And Niebuhr says, your if is a very big one. If religion is good, it may be very good and it may be bad. So here you have an excellent example of bad religion, which is Emmett Fox Scientific Christianity, which mixes Christianity with Darwinism. And that's why people should not be court-ordered into AA. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the city council during the call to the public? Seeing none, we'll close the call to the public. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Would any of the council members like to remove any of the items for separate discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Councilmember McCoy. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7, correspondence, communications, petitions, announcements, and the city manager report. Item 7.1 is to announce the vacancies on the Lake Havasu City boards, committees, and commissions. Ms. Williams?
Mayor and City Council, there are a number of vacancies on Lake Havasu City boards, committees, and commissions. The following is a listing of those vacancies. Board of Adjustment, 3 regular members, 3 alternate members. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, 1 regular member, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, 1 alternate member. Anyone interested can pick up a packet at City Hall, and they are also available on the city's website.
Thank you. Item 7.2 is the city manager's report. Mr. Knutson?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start this evening's report with update at SARA Park. The city has improved the disc golf course in SARA Park. It's located just south of Dillon's Dog Park. It's the course is open to the public. It's free of charge, and during normal park hours, which is sunrise to sunset. The photo presented here on the right features our park maintenance technicians, Nick Paskey and Dale Turk, and they're installing new disc golf baskets that the city installed just a few weeks ago. The rest of the efforts at the disc golf course has all been attributed to the Lake Havasu Disc Golf Club. They've designed and shaped an 18-hole course, and they'll be hosting a tournament this Saturday at 8 a.m. and we'll have over 100 players are expected to compete in the tournament, and about 90% of those are going to be coming from outside Lake Havasu City. Mayor Sheehy, you proclaimed Saturday, January 18th as Havasu Memorial Walkway First Responders Installation Ceremony Day in Lake Havasu City. The Havasu Memorial Walkway, it's a combined effort of the Havasu Freedom Foundation, the Marine Corps League, and support from Lake Havasu City. The brick path located under the London Bridge honors veterans who have fought for our freedom. And on this day, the effort was expanded to include and honor our first responders. In the picture on the bottom left, you'll see our maintenance specialist, Ken Bobby, installing the bricks. The crews worked very hard beautifying the area, and they did a fantastic job. It was a great day. Mayor Sheehy, you also proclaimed Friday, January 17th as MARYANN Elizabeth Cowan Day for her unselfish sacrifices made by her service in defense of our nation, with honor and distinction for the past 20 years attaining the rank of Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. Chief Cowan grew up in Lake Havasu City, attended Oro Grande Elementary School and Thunderbolt Middle School. After graduating from Lake Havasu High School in 1999, she attended and graduated from the United States Navy Boot Camp. Congratulations to Chief Cowan on her outstanding career with the United States Navy. Thank you for your service, and we wish you lots of luck in your future endeavors. Saturday, January 25th was proclaimed Earl F. Reentz Day in Lake Havasu City on his 90th birthday. Vice Mayor Dave Lane, you joined his family and friends at the celebration and presented him with this proclamation. Earl is a Marine Corps veteran and a lifetime member of the Lake Havasu City Marine Corps League. We thank Earl for his service to our country, and we wish him a happy 90th birthday. Mayor Sheehy, you and myself visited the Capitol just last week to discuss Lake Havasu City issues with our state leadership. We're very, very grateful for our 2 representatives, Leo Biasucci and Regina Cobb, and our Senator Sonny Borelli for their support of Lake Havasu City and for meeting with us to discuss very important local issues that are going to impact us for years to come. And finally, letting the public know that the first coffee with the mayor and city manager for 2020 will be held on Friday, February 7th from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we're going to be at ASU Lake Havasu in the Santiago room. Residents are as always, are encouraged to attend to express any issues, concerns, or questions. The meeting does not require an RSVP, so please show up and bring your questions and comments. Mayor and Council, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Knutson? All right, moving on to number 8, our public hearings. Our first public hearing is 8.1, adopt resolution number 20-3373, declaring as a public record the Lake Havasu City amendments to Title 14 zoning, dated January 28th, 2020. Mr. Morris.
Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you. As you mentioned, this is a request to amend the permitted uses table, the development code. This is really a 2-part process, the way it's been laid out. This first portion is to create a resolution to adopt a public document. So the items we'll be talking about at this first item will be if you want any changes to the proposed development code than what were recommended by the Planning Commission, this is the time to make those changes. The next item will be adoption of the ordinance that adopts that public record for the changes you'll make at this first item. So I may not be explaining that as clearly as I could. So it's really a two-part process. The first step is to go through the proposed changes and get those clarified. And once those are clarified, the next item will be to adopt them per the ordinance. So with that, I'll move on. As I'd mentioned, this is an update to the development code, specifically the permitted uses table. There have been a number of changes to the development code. It was revised and updated in 2016. And since that time, there have been a couple revisions, once in 2017, and then again in 2018, there were some changes here and there in the code. While applying the permitted uses table, which is a matrix of the different zoning districts and different types of uses and what's allowed in different zoning districts, while applying that table over the last 4 years, it's come to staff's attention that there are some items that need to be tweaked, looked at a little more closely. Partly because it was part of the new development code, there were some newer zoning districts, and it made sense at that time to maybe make some allowed uses. But while we've been using it, it's been determined that maybe those need to be looked at a little more closely. So with that in mind, there were the specific items that really we thought staff felt should be addressed would be like adding medical offices and clinics to the mixed-use UMS district, separating animal boarding and animal grooming into different categories, adding alcohol beverage sales in the commercial health district, possibly adding a caretaker's quarters as an accessory use in non-residential zoning districts, and then separating gas station and fuel sales from light vehicle service and maintenance. So we thought, well, at that time, we have a handful of items. Why don't we take this opportunity to go before the Planning Commission and look at the table overall from beginning to end and see if there are any other proposed changes that may make sense. So with that, the Planning Commission held a meeting on December 18th, and they made some proposed recommended changes, which are in your packet under tracked changes. And it shows what's proposed to be changed and what's proposed to remain and any modifications to the code. I've got a list of there's 3 pages here of the permitted uses table. However you want to do this, we can go through it item by item for the changes, or if you like, we can field questions or whatever questions you may have, or a combination of those. So at this point, at your direction on how you want to move forward.
Yeah, do any members of the council have any specific questions from the information that was provided?
Mr. Mayor, I just have one.
Yeah, okay, Councilmember Grout.
If I might ask, can you kind of speak to the, here on this page that we're looking at, we have LM2, LM3, LM4. I was kind of curious about the 2 and 4.
All right.
The separation of the animal boarding and animal grooming and care, I understand that, but in some cases, maybe a veterinarian office, like what drove that change, if you could highlight that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Grote, thank you. What happened is, right now, the current, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump forward to the definitions of those. The current definition of animal care and boarding, which we proposed, the Planning Commission recommended be eliminated and broken up into animal boarding and then separate animal care, grooming, and care. So animal care and boarding was the original category, and that's very broad. It's commercial establishment providing boarding, grooming, training, daycare, and other indoor non-medical services for domestic pets, primarily dogs and cats and other small animals such as rabbits. Outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards, are generally not included in this use. This use includes, but is not limited to, animal training, daycare, kennels, but does not include a veterinary hospital. So veterinary hospital is a totally different category. What the Planning Commission recommended was breaking that up to animal boarding, which is a more intensive use because the animals are there all days on end, if you will. So that's an establishment providing boarding services or daycare for domestic pets, primarily dogs and cats and other small animals like rabbits. Outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards, are also included in that use. This does not include veterinary hospitals or the boarding of horses. Horses are allowed to be boarded only in the zoning that allows horses. So that's the more intense use, the animal boarding. And because one of the reasons this came about is there are animal grooming places all over town. People have a lot of pets and they love their pets and they get them groomed. And there are a number of grooming places that are in zoning districts that don't allow animal care and boarding like a boarding place. So it made more sense because our animals are like our kids. They're almost like people to so many pet owners. So animal grooming and care is a separate category that provides indoor uses, including grooming, training, and other non-medical services for domestic pets, primarily dogs and cats, and other small animals. Outdoor facilities, including runs and exercise yards, are not included in the use, and it does not include a veterinary hospital or grooming and care of horses. So trying to break it down to the indoor uses that are grooming and care where the pets aren't going to be there for days or days on end, whereas in the animal boarding, they're more likely to be there a week, a few days, something like that. It's more intense use. And the animal boarding is more toward the light industrial, and some C2 with a conditional use permit, I believe. And then the grooming is more allowed in the mixed use districts, the commercial districts, things like that. So I hope that helps answer your question.
It does. Thank you, sir. I was just wondering under which one of these, like an animal spa, would exist if they groomed and boarded.
Well, if they're grooming and boarding, then the boarding one would rule. That'd be the more intense use. So the grooming, anywhere that animal boarding is allowed, those zoning districts also allow animal grooming and care.
Yeah, so generally what we're doing tonight is it's already gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is a commission that's appointed by the council. But as applicants come in to make applications to the city, they reference the table and they notice that it might make more sense for that use to be allowed or not. Staff saves that up and then goes through this public process where we obviously are having a public hearing today on 2 items, and then there was a public hearing during the council, or excuse me, during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on December 18th. So a couple of things just to point out is the adding of the caretaker's quarters as an accessory use is the idea of adding a spot for someone like a security guard or security personnel, like in a storage unit type place, which that use is currently not allowed. And then also separating out gas station, which is like fuel sales, and convenience store from light vehicle service and repair to protect integrities of neighborhoods. So obviously light maintenance and repair is a little bit more intensive of a use than just fuel sales with some convenience items available. So I believe Planning and Zoning did a great job going through this and working with staff to bring this together. And it's not uncommon for us to have these changes as applicants come forward. So do any members of the council have any further questions before we open the public hearing? Councilmember Dolan?
Do we have any requests at the moment from any developers or anything that would affect this, that would now, in term, they would be not need to request a zoning change for, to put their business in? Is there anything at the moment that someone could say 3 weeks from now, oh, that's why you guys did it, because so-and-so wanted to put that business there?
I'm not aware of any at this point. There were that wasn't any driving force in these proposed changes. It's just a matter of time. And some of the more urgent ones, like allowing liquor licenses to be issued for businesses that sell liquor licenses, that sell alcohol, in zoning districts where it wasn't allowed, when that was just an oversight. So that was the main driver for taking care of some little issues here and there that need to be addressed. Okay. And again, as part of that, we said, hey, let's just look at the entire development table, the permitted uses table, and see if there's other changes that make sense too.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? If so, you just make your way to the podium and state your name. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember
Motion?
McCoy? Yes.
I move to adopt resolution number 20-3373, declaring as a public record the Lake Havasu City amendments to Title 14 zoning dated January 28, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember McCoy and a second from Councilmember Dolan. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8.2, which is the companion item, is adopt ordinance number 20-1229, amending Title 14 Zoning Development Code, Sections 14.03.02, Permitted Use Table, 14.03.03, Use Specific Standards, and 14.06.03, Definitions. Mr. Morris.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, and council members, thank you. This is basically an ordinance approving what you just approved at the previous item. You approved that resolution for the public document. Now we're asking that this be approved by ordinance to make those changes. And the reason we do this is because the permitted uses table is a big bulky thing, and it's kind of difficult to publish that in a public record in the newspaper or whatnot. And so this is we find a cleaner mechanism for doing it, even though it's 2 steps. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions before we open the public hearing? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Dolan?
motion?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance number 20-1229, amending Lake Havasu City Code Title 14 zoning by reference.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilmember Dolan and a second from Councilmember Grote. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Item 8.3 is adopt resolution number 20-3374, approving a grant agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation Multimodal Planning Division Aeronautics Group for the Apron Rehabilitate Infield Areas Erosion Control Project between runway 14 and 32 and taxiway A. Mr. Erb. Yeah, if you could just turn on the microphone, please. Yeah, thank you.
How's that? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we have before you tonight is an ADOT grant agreement for our airport's infield area erosion control project. Basically, this grant is to provide funding for 2 areas at our airport that are currently failing. It's 2 fields between the runway and the taxiway, and it'll pay for 90% of both the design and construction projects coming up. For those of you not familiar with our airport, what I have highlighted in yellow is the runway. What I have shown in green is our taxiway alpha, and what is shown in red is the limits of the project. What you see here in this slide is the soils that are currently failing, which is causing this project to come to be. The slide on the right shows sloughing of soil in that field. You can see that the soil is starting to separate. And what happens when aircraft, helicopters land, you get prop wash that separates the soil, and it becomes debris that flies around and lands on the runway as well as taxiways. That could become a problem because if that debris ends up in jet engines, or it could possibly flatten tires on aircraft. So this is something that needs to be addressed. If you look at the photo on the left, you can see entire areas where the soils have separated, and the top course is now gone. The next slide shows what it's going to look like after the project. It's going to be a different type of material. It's going to be an aggregate base course. And it will be very stable, so when aircraft fly by, it's not gonna disperse. The total project cost is going to be $500,000. $40,000 will be for design, $460,000 will be for construction. The ADOT grant will be 90% of the total project for $450,000. The city matching portion will be 10% at 50 grand. If with your approval tonight, we can move forward design as early as February this year. We would expect to have it out to bid this summer, and construction will begin in early fall. So with that, city staff would recommend that city council move forward with the approval of this grant agreement. I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, motion.
Councilmember Grote, yes.
I move to adopt resolution number 20-3374, approving the airport development reimbursable grant agreement E0S2E01C with the Arizona Department of Transportation, Multimodal Planning Division, Aeronautics Group for the design and construction of erosion control improvements between runway 14/32 and taxiway A, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second?
We have a motion from Councilmember Grote and a second from Councilmember Lynn. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8.4 is approve addendum 6, task order to professional services agreement with CNS Engineers, Inc. for the design services of, for the infield areas erosion control project. Mr. Herb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we have now before you tonight is a task order, addendum 6, to the professional service agreement with CNS Engineers. This task order is only for design services only, and it will allow our engineer to move forward with the design of the erosion control project we just talked about earlier. Again, ADOT will be paying for 90% of this project. We expect the design cost to be almost $40,000. Again, ADOT will fund 90% of that, which is about $36,000. The city contribution will be nearly $4,000. Again, with your approval tonight, we would expect to move forward with design in February of this year, out to bid by this summer, and we will begin construction in early fall. So again, city staff recommends city council move forward and approve the task order that's before you tonight.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councilmember Koch, I believe you were.
motion?
Yes.
I move to approve addendum number 6, task order to professional services agreement with CNS Engineers, Inc. for the design services for infilled areas erosion control project.
I'll second, I guess.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Councilmember Dolan. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Item 8.5 is ratify expenditures exceeding $50,000 with Alliance Service and Control Specialist for the Port Water Treatment Plant PLC and programming upgrades to the supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA system. Mr. Frosley.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item is actually related to a scheduled maintenance activity at our water treatment plant. In that over the last few years, we've been experiencing failure in many of our PLCs at the water treatment plant. PLC is programmable logic controller, and that's what allows our SCADA system to communicate with the various components at the treatment plant and allows us to turn on pumps, turn off pumps, monitor water levels, open and close valves. It's very important. When they fail, it gives our staff an alarm, and we have to go out on site. So we need reliable PLCs. Because we are aware of these failures, last year during the budget process, we asked for $40,000 and were approved for that. This year, when we went to initiate that project, I think what happened is when the programming part came, it may have become a little overwhelming for our current staff, so what they did was called Alliance in to help them. That doesn't raise any red flags for me. Alliance does most of our programming. In fact, we've had annual on-call service agreements for programming and SCADA support. This year we did not. We had $40,000 in the budget, and the new processes that I put in place in Public Works and the administration of Public Works to track invoicing started seeing multiple invoices with Alliance, and by the time and then we tried to pair that with POs, and we couldn't find a PO, which means no contract. So we missed the step in the procurement part. I've taken steps to make sure this doesn't happen in the future, but we went beyond what we can without council approval, beyond 40,000 what we had in the budget, and still beyond the 50,000, which is a threshold for council approval. So we're here tonight to ratify those expenditures. Alliance has been paid. They did the work. It was meaningful work, and it's got us in an operational condition, so we're in good shape. What we did is we looked at some other line items within the water approved budget, and we have a line item called instrumentation and controls, which is for parts for our SCADA system. That was approved for $101,000, and to date we've spent just over $800 in that account. So we've transferred funds from that account to pay Alliance. Alliance is off the project. If we need Alliance in the future, we'll have to come back to council to get a contract and a scope of work approved. So if you need any more details, I'm happy to provide them. Otherwise, I'm asking for ratification of those expenditures.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions for Mr. Frosley?
I have a question.
Councilman Dolan?
It says exceeding 50,000. Do we know how much we exceeded
Yes,
it
we
by?
spent approximately 75,000.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Grow?
Be happy to ratify this. Think it's a well worthwhile investment, but I was just curious, the instrumentation and controls budget, do you have any expenditures you anticipate to offset against that account that would create an issue with this movement?
No, we're trying to be proactive with our PLC replacement, so that's what that money was for. PLCs are on not only our treatment plants, our water treatment plant, but our 3 wastewater treatment plants, every single water tank, booster station, there's hundreds of them. So we're trying to proactively replace those before they run to failure. That's what that account is for. So now we're going to be in reactive mode for the remainder of this year and replace if they do fail, because we needed that money to finish at the water treatment plant.
Great. Any other questions before Vice Mayor Lane?
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Frosley, thank you for bringing this to us. I have a question. Are you going to be able to absorb this into your budget when it wasn't money that you were planning on spending just by going to reactive instead of proactive?
Yes, we're confident in that we can do this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Motion, Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Grow?
I move to ratify and approve expenditures exceeding $50,000 with Alliance Service and Control Specialist for the Port Water Treatment Plant PLC and programming upgrades to the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisitions SCADA system. Thanks, sir.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Grow and a second from Vice Mayor Lane. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Item 8.6 is adopt the Regional Transit Feasibility and Implementation Plan, the Transit Plan. Mr. Gallegos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Very good to be here with you today. Today we're going to have a brief presentation on the last year's worth of work that the MPO has been involved with. What you have in your packets and what's being presented to you is the Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization Regional Transit Feasibility and Implementation Study. A long title, we'll call it Transit Plan for today, but it does reflect really the direct work of the last year, you could even say last year and a half of the MPO working along with the city to bring this transit plan here today. We will be brief in that we have had several community meetings, and I do want to save time for questions and any comments you all may have. I know with respect to the public, we do have our mayor who sits on our executive board along with Vice Mayor Lane, Council Member McCoy, Jess Knutson sits on our tax, so we have spent several presentations with many members of the body here, but to be respectful of the whole body, you do have the entire transit plan in your packet. It's just a little under 400 pages, so I just want to hit on really some very key things to bring out of it. One of the main things, and I'm going to hit on, is the quality of life for any community is the mobility of its people. And this is something that was so important that was highlighted in the plan. And on your plan, if you have your plan in front of you, I'm looking at page 9. And this was really something that was very important in the planning process. And you see this transit demand model that's laid out there, and I'm going to just go ahead and list for the public here that they don't have in front of them. This model says where people live, where people work, where people play, where people learn, and where people shop. And this was really important that this was understood through the planning process of where the movement of people are. As planners, we recognize that we want to be able to bring forward a plan that is realistic, that's achievable, that's sustainable, that hears the wishes and the needs of the community, but ultimately balances out with the available resources. So today I did not want to work this last year to bring a plan to you that we did not feel 100% as an MPO behind. I'm proud to say that we are, and I really believe that this promotes the mobility of our community, that this helps with public transportation being another mode of transportation. If you remember, the MPO's last plan that we worked on was a bicycle pedestrian study. Now we're doing this public transit study that is being brought to you today, and this promotes a quality of life that absolutely reflects the Lake Havasu City region, and that people need to get to their doctors, to their jobs, to school, to recreation. It is part of economic development, and it's part of life in any given community, and we're proud that this plan brings forward that. The second point that I'd like to make, and in listening to the various feedback of community meetings, of focus meetings, and tracking a lot of comments, whether it's through social media or the newspaper, I would say overwhelmingly there has been support for the plan, but we recognize that there have been comments across the board, and some of the comments that I recognized were there was support for transit, but there was also feedback as to we don't want to see tax dollars increase. We don't want to pay additional funds. And I really want to emphasize today, and hopefully you've had time to really go through the plan, but there's nothing that we put together in this plan that's being brought forward to you today to propose increasing any taxes whatsoever. This plan recognizes the current commitment of the city to public transportation through Havasu Mobility. I will say what we've attempted to do in this document is recognize that there's actually federal tax dollars available to us that we're not utilizing. And they're actually our own tax dollars here. They're Havasu tax dollars that, since we haven't had a plan, have not been able to stay in the community for public transportation. So what this plan will do for the region will actually keep existing tax dollars here that are currently going to, say, Flagstaff or Sierra Vista or another place that has an approved transit system. So to be clear, no proposal of tax increases in this plan, but there is a proposal to keep our existing tax dollars here and make them absolutely work for the community in their wishes and their wants. My last point that I'd like to make before I turn it over to our consultant for a few minutes is just to highlight partnerships. And this is no real surprise probably to anyone up here and in the public, but oh my gosh, do we have some incredible people in Havasu. We really do. And that was really seen throughout this whole process, through the community meetings, and just meeting individually. We really wanted to take significant time and really hear from major stakeholders in the community. So we made sure that we made some specific time with places like ASU Havasu, Mojave Community College, the Regional Medical Center, the shops at Lake Havasu, various businesses in the community, Go Lake Havasu, the Chamber. There was just a whole list, a tribe. There was a whole list of these very key organizations that we said, you know, where do you fit in with public transportation? Can you use this? And then maybe the more of the bottom line question is, would you be a partner with it? Not just in words, but actual resources, which is usually where the conversation can really get separated fairly quickly. I will say each of those conversations incredibly positive. As we turn this plan over to the city tonight to implement it, I would just highlight that to the mayor, to the council, to the city manager. You really do have some incredible partnerships moving forward that I think are going to make this transit plan and system incredibly positive and very inspiring to other transit systems around the state of Arizona. In closing on my part, I'd like to just say that I have the privilege of sitting on the Arizona Transit Association board. We're a board that represents all of Arizona, and transit has some challenges in Arizona for sure with regards to resources, but I want to express deep appreciation for this council and the city's commitment to what they've done with transit over the years. There has been an ongoing commitment to the people of this region to have a system of transit, and I think moving forward, you'll be able to have that and more because this plan helps in bringing innovation, technology, and really partnering with federal dollars. So with that said, that's really my part. I'd like to turn it over to Phyllis Davis, who was our consultant and our project manager. We hired Phyllis through Jacobs, who's now with Kittleson and Associates, and she's just going to briefly hit on a few points with you, and then we'll wrap up our presentation with Patrick Cypress, your transit manager for Havasu Mobility, and then Mr. Mayor and Council, we can open it up to questions and comments. But Ms. Davis? You bet.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. Again, I'm Phyllis Davis. I am the project manager for this plan, and I'm excited to be here for our final time in front of you guys to talk about the plan. When we first started the transit implementation study, we really wanted it to be community-driven and community-designed, because at the heart of public transportation is really the people in our community, whether that's the people who live here or the people that are visiting here. So throughout the planning process, we had a multi-phase community outreach approach. So for the first phase, we went out and we just asked people, do you even want to see public transportation in Lake Havasu? So we were gauging the desire and the need, the demand for public transportation. Overwhelmingly, as we all know, when we go to public meetings, you hear both the negative and the positive, but overwhelmingly, everything was supportive. During the first phase, over 70% of the people that were surveyed said that they were in favor of public transportation in Lake Havasu. In addition to those surveyed, we had, like Vinny talked about, a lot of meetings with different businesses and agencies and organizations throughout the community. I heard over and over and over that students were having a hard time getting to work or to school because they didn't have reliable transportation. Employers were having a hard time finding employees because they didn't have reliable transportation. And over during these meetings, I heard from our local stakeholders how excited they were to see public transportation back in Lake Havasu, because it's a basic mobility that is missing now. During the second phase of public outreach, we went out with ideas of these are our concepts that we have for public transportation. We asked for feedback. We asked members of the community to join us as local focus group members, and they helped us mark on maps and design what they would like to see in public transportation. We went back and we edited all of our work, and we came up with what I think is a really sustainable and smart approach for Lake Havasu going forward. So the plan that you have in front of you is a phased idea, a phased implementation of public transportation in Lake Havasu. We have had transit here in the past. At one point in time, there were 5 routes, 87 stops. We wanted to look at our transportation system, our public transportation system this time differently. It's been 6 years since that's been gone, and we really want to be smart and sustainable. And like Vinny hit on, we really want to be fiscally smart with what we're doing. So what we created is a phased approach that starts very small and strategic. And as the years progress and as ridership increases, it builds upon itself. So starting small, you'll be able to create enthusiasm. You'll be able to create ridership. We'll be able to utilize data, and we'll be able to transition the routes as needed. As we all know, we have seasonal deviations in our population that maybe during certain times of the year, the routes look different than they do during the summer times. As it progresses, we're looking at utilizing some strategic technology advancements in public transportation to help reduce the first last mile connection to public transportation. And that's a great way of not having this huge, robust public transportation system, but being really smart with our money, being smart with how people today want to travel. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick Caprice from Havasu Mobility.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council and everybody in attendance. My name is Patrick Cypress, and I've been with the city for approximately 5 years. Lived in town 21 years, so I've seen just about everything happen. My goal is to bring this back to the community, and I've partnered with various agencies and organizations within the community since 2015, trying to see what we missed last time, trying to see what the needs truly were. And as I got through this plan, I found out that there's still a big need here. There was a big need previously when we had HAT. Just to give you a real quick facts, peak ridership back in the 2000s was about 140,000 a year. So we were transporting 400 people a day back in those years. Today's population, as we know, has grown probably about by 10,000 since those early 2000s. So now we have that base ridership plus other riders. So now the idea was to go and find demographics and see what the people need now. As we continue to grow and to grow our businesses and housing market continues to grow as well, we want to have a small but unique transit system that's as unique as Lake Havasu City is. And as you know, we are seasonal. We have our winter visitors and our summer visitors, and we have that ebb and flow. So we have to have a system that can easily move and adjust with that ebb and flow and always provide the service to the community that they need for transportation. We are still going to keep intact Havasu Mobility, which is a big paratransit component, which is public transit, but it's not for everybody in the public. When this route goes out in the first probably 6 months, we're going to start implementing just some action plans to go through this. And with those plans come other plans through the FTA, who we're going to get our funding from. Like Vinny said earlier, that the funding that we're going to use is already set aside for us. It's been set aside from previous leadership. So we're going to be able to get this taken off the next 2 years without any extra funds from the city. And the goal is we can do that, and we've proven it on paper. So now with correct data and correct partnerships within the community, we have a very good chance of seeing this take off. And we'll be with other communities that are in Nevada and Colorado that are very much similar to our size, and they do the same thing with their transit. They have very unique transit systems, but they cater to not only the citizens, but to their visitors that are coming in. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I'm not sure which one would want to address the initial phase. There's a couple of routes. Just talk a little bit about the route for a minute.
Sure, go ahead. I can do that. We initially on our plan, we had multiple routes. Our main line was basically going up and down McCulloch. So that'll probably be our first phase, but we can expand from that. So we're going to have a deviated route, which means we can go up to 3/4 of a mile out of our fixed route. So we're thinking maybe a route going up Mesquite to Acoma, to Swanson, maybe back down to Acoma, come around and loop back, stop by the senior center and adjust with that. And then because of that, we also have to offer complimentary paratransit. So that means the individuals that cannot make it to a bus stop to get on the bus, then we will actually have a paratransit vehicle go pick them up and then take them where they want to be for the day. So we're going to multi-layer. So we're going to have not only Havasu Mobility, we're going to have complimentary paratransit as well. And this is all taken care of in that first phase.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add just one part to that. You know, you really have a real transit champion in Patrick. Really was a privilege to work side by side with him. One of the things that he's talked frequently about and is actually part of this plan is innovation, something called microtransit. A lot of times, depending on your background and experience, I know in the public, maybe where you come from, you know, you have different images of what public transportation is or is not. There can be an image of a big city transit. I will tell you, microtransit, just very briefly, is using smaller vehicles, being much more efficient, and really bringing in technology. Patrick, I'm sure will bring that back to Mayor and Council and talk in the future with updates. With that said, though, you know, you're not going to see, again, the past of those 87 bus stops with very large buses on this fixed route system. You're going to see something that is very responsive to the community. Again, those smaller type vehicles, using technology, being able to schedule rides in a way that wasn't done 20 years ago, if even 5 years ago. And microtransit is something fairly new in the country. Patrick knows a great wealth about it, and will be bringing that, I believe, to the community as this first phase grows, gets strong, and from there. So that innovation is going to be a real game changer for this region.
Thank you, Vinny. And along with that, most of the vehicles that we've been looking at are going to be either hybrid or electric. So we're really going to push the envelope and make everything, you know, state of the art. Being that way, then if we let technology drive it, we'll have a system that's very nimble and can move around and can change with the ebb and the flow of the needs of the community, as well as reduce its carbon footprint in the city. So even when we do microtransit, those will be either all electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles as well.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have any questions?
Yeah, I have a
Councilmember
question.
Dolan?
Just want to thank you guys. This is a great report. I flipped to it the other day. I think it's definitely needed, and it gives us the opportunity to have a few years before it costs us money, where we can build into it and see how it works. I noticed too, as a business owner, a lot of the younger people are choosing not to drive, not to get their licenses and drive, and that they're relying a lot on the shuttle services. So I think this will be great. Just out of curiosity, where could people find the implementation plan online? It's 82 pages, but it shows a lot of the graphics and a lot of the. It'd be great if anybody has any questions of visualizing it in their head. Everything's in there and it explains a lot. So,
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Dolan, thank you very much for that question. Currently, it does actually exist on the Lake Havasu City webpage. We have had on the page a transit link for the last, I believe, 9 months, and as the planning process has taken place, so there is a link there. There's a link on the MPO. The newspaper just did an article, and they have available on the online version. As we transition, though, to the city, I assume we'll go ahead and probably in the next few weeks put that in a place other than where it is currently. But those are the locations for it online at this point.
perfect. Yeah, I would encourage people to take a look at it. It's very informative and easy to go through. So, and it explains all the different phases and how we would evolve to the next phase. So, thank you again.
Any other questions or comments? Vice Mayor Lane? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lane? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. First off, I just, no questions. Jim asked the question that I was going to have for you. But Ms. Davis and Kittleson Associates, thank you for all the hard work you've done with this. And I really want to thank the citizens. There was a lot of citizen outreach on this. Some of the people I see here tonight, and they were at several of the meetings that we held open to the public, and we really appreciate your input. That's what we want, is the public input on this program as we move forward and implement the different plans, because it's your guys' transit system. It's so that we can reach out to those people that truly need a transit system. And we wouldn't be able to do this without the partnerships that we have. The schools, ASU, MCC, they definitely want to help their students by getting this plan up and running, and also our major employers, which includes the Chemehueve tribe. There was many meetings where the chairman of the tribe actually came over across the lake to come over here to tell us what they would like to see in a transportation plan for their employees here, and they are willing to partnership with us as we move forward. So it's not something the city's taken on all by itself. It's something that is definitely a project with all of the community members and the employers and the other stakeholders. So I just want to say thank you for putting together such a wonderful plan, and really thank you to the citizens for helping us and telling us what it is that you guys truly need, so we don't have empty buses driving around and burning fuel. So thank you.
Councilmember Lynn?
Yes, thank you. I'm really excited about this. I had a question though. I'm looking at the implementation activities, and maybe it's too soon to ask this question, but obviously you'll have to establish the city transit department and hire a transit administrator. Any idea what that looks like? Like how many staff you're looking at?
Well, we're looking at it, probably two staff, an admin person, and probably a lead. Currently, we went pretty efficient, pretty lean with the current staff that we have. So we've kind of squeezed as much as we can. So we will probably see that probably at the beginning of the new fiscal year, if everything goes as planned.
As for drivers, any idea on what that looks like?
Drivers are going to be, for the fixed route, they are going to be commercial drivers with bus endorsements, because they're going to hold about 22 people. So probably add like 2 drivers at first, and then slowly, again, go through the data, see what it's bringing back to us before we just start putting things out there. So, all right.
Any other questions from the council? So does it sound too good to be true? Like it doesn't cost any more money, and we get to bring it back. So that again is through the federal subsidies that are already available to our communities that are being redistributed to other cities within within the state of Arizona. So so it's just taking those dollars that we're already paying and implementing them into that. But we are able to do this right now with no additional cost to the general fund, and future costs to the general fund are less than $100,000. So, but that doesn't take into account some of the ridership yet. So there's lots of positives to this. So I just don't want you to think it's too good to be true, because it really is a great opportunity to get our citizens around and have reliable transportation alternative for our citizens based on some of the other transportation options that are already out there. All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this matter? Please just make your way to the podium and state your name.
Name's Gary Brock. Thank you for listening. Listening to this, I think public transit is great. I think it's a great idea. My concern is that you're not going to be able to find drivers. There's not enough tradespeople out there right now. Companies are hiring drivers at $20, $30, $40 an hour just to drive. Where is the city of Lake Havasu going to come up with that kind of money to get good people to drive these buses? That would be my only concern.
Yeah, no, great point. And as Patrick had mentioned, initially we'd be looking at 1 to 2 additional drivers to recruit. Any other? Yeah, just state your name for the record.
My name's Mark Zeef. I just wondered if you guys took into consideration of the 13 shuttle services that are existing in Lake Havasu since I've been here for 5 years. I just looked on Google Maps. There's 11, and then you add Uber and Lyft, and that's, some of these shuttle services have 10 or 15 vans already. And then the other thing was, is it a free service for the people? Do they have to pay to get on these shuttles? And is it a 24-hour bus system? What are the hours of it? Would it compete with the late night bar crowd? Would you be getting a lot of spring breakers on these buses, drunk, acting a fool? If it's free, would you pass out? Would you get a monthly pass to the city for a bus route?
That was a lot of questions. I hope I kept track of all those. Yeah, so it would be, folks would pay for it. It would not be a 24-hour model. I'll let Patrick come up and talk about some of the specifics on what that looks like.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, just briefly, just on that first point, we really did want, Vice Mayor Lane also hit on, the openness to the public. Part of the public was private business throughout the community. We did have several people attend the meetings, and we heard their feedback. Really, again, in this plan, we really hope to be respectful of the entire community, both private and public. I believe that there is an absolute opportunity with the city to work with the existing services, and by no means would we want to bring a plan that would affect or really dramatically impact that. I think there's plenty of work out there for everybody, and hopefully this plan makes it more efficient on the gentleman's first point.
Yeah, and if I may, Patrick, before you start, a lot of the shuttle companies attended the public hearings, as did those rideshare drivers that are independent drivers. I saw many of the public hearings, but Patrick, if you could address some of the more specifics.
As far as fares, it's going to be nominal fare. Right now, we get $2 for Havasu Mobility. That doesn't really pay anything towards running the system, but it'll be nominal, probably $1 or $2. It's not running 24/7 because that's not an effective model for the city. So it will probably run, most likely like smaller communities our size usually run Monday through Saturday, limited hours on Saturday, and maybe limited Sunday service or no Sunday service at all. Probably late time to bring people in back and forth from work, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning. So we're not going after the independent shuttles in their business, because you got to remember, there's already people that'll still ride the private shuttles that'll ride public transit too. So it's not like we're coming in and going to blanket the city with a bunch of vehicles to go out and take the business away from the private independents in town. Like Vinny said, we eventually will have partnerships with them, because we'll have last mile and first mile, which means if we come to a point where the transit's really going, we're going to need help within the community to bring these people back closer to their residences. Because when we had those 80-some bus stops, we were going all the way in the hills and all over town, and we're not going to do that this time. So that's how we're going to layer it. So down the road, we're going to be probably looking for some public-private partners as well.
Great, thank you. Sir, if you could just state your name for the record.
Yes, my name's James Campbell, and I thank you for letting me up here. I'm new here, and it's kind of new to me, but I'm an enthusiastic kind of person. Anyway, I come from a couple of cities that really were, they were in the forefront with this public transportation. Chico, California implemented bike paths, one of the first cities in the country to do that. Great thing for us bike riders up there, a college, a university town, and it worked really well. The reason I'm up here is to bring up the point that we need to encourage people to get on the public transit systems. I've seen so many empty buses. I've come from Portland, where we have a great little light rail system, MAX. You get on it and there's nobody on it half the time. So maybe we need to bring that up. And the $6 shuttles, oh boy, those things are going like crazy. Everybody's got shuttle on their car now, every other car. That's great. And I think they know how to deal with drunks and people that are from bars. And thank goodness the drunks are riding in those things now. I think that's very important to me. One of my major concerns here in town is the traffic. I've been, last summer, 2 times almost got killed, literally, by errant drivers. One ran one of the flicking yellow lights, just went right through, and I had to skid, had a full load of equipment in the back of my truck. Watched myself come closer and closer, finally stopped. And then another man, I was pulling out downtown on McCulloch, and he was racing up the street. I didn't see him, but he came up real fast. I did see him. Well, I didn't see him down the street. All of a sudden he was there, within this far from hitting me. I think I brought this up last time I was here. I was very scared, and probably affected my driving for quite a while. So I'm glad we have a shuttle system, because we have a lot of traffic. I say, well, if I want this much traffic, I'll go back to the city, but something we have to deal with. Anyway, I'm grateful for the public transportation system. I like your report. It was very good and what you had to say. I'm an advocate of that, and I thank you for letting me speak. That's about all I had to say.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the City Council on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor Lane?
Motion?
Yes.
I move to adopt the Lake Havasu MPO Regional Transit Feasibility and Implementation Plan and direct staff to implement the plan as necessary and appropriate.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Lane and a second from Councilmember Dolan. Is there any further discussion? All right, we are ready to vote.
Motion carries 7-0.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on to item 9, current events. Do any of our council members have any council committee reports? No? All right, one quick update, Governor Ducey will be joining us here in Lake Havasu City, hosted by the Lake Havasu Area Chamber of Commerce on Thursday, February 13th. If you're interested, you can call the Chamber of Commerce or go to the website to register. I will be giving a State of the City update, and the Governor will give a State of the State update. It's a morning event, and again, call the Chamber of Commerce. You can reach them at 855-4115 or at havasuchamber.com for tickets. It is a ticketed event because of the Governor, so if you could please make sure you register if you would like to attend. Any other council committee reports? All right, item 10 on our agenda is our final call to the public. Would anyone like to address the City Council at this final call to the public? Seeing none, we'll close the call to the public. Item 11 is our future meetings. On Thursday, February 6th, 2020 at 8:30 in the morning, we'll have our City Council planning session. That's at the Islander Resort. On Tuesday, February 11th, 2020 at 6 p.m., we'll have a regular meeting. And on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020 at 6 p.m., we will also have a regular meeting. Are there any future discussion items? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. Be kind. We'll see you next time.